Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, or the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January the 4th, 2020. Guado Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton was celebrating the first Tuesday of the African American History Month in 2020. And without our great African American history, we would not have sports at the level that we have as in the United States today.
There's so many things we would not have without African Americans. Really appreciate that. As the global empire expands, you can follow Big C Sports today, sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports Podcast on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over. Yours, Big C, I think if the 49ers used a smart TV, they would have seen that they still had more room to run the football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, running wasn't a priority for the San Francisco 49ers, Charlton. And a lot of people forget that what got them the lead in the game is throwing the football. And their running game was held in check. I mean, if you look at the Super Bowl statistically, and everyone said that the 49ers would come into the game and dominate it.
Yeah.
Their running backs average 5 yards a carry, which is great by
That's
NFL
great.
standards.
That's Hall of Fame
but the
standards.
Kansas City Chiefs were even better at 6 yards a carry.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to dance with the person you brought to the dance. I do want to make sure that I give out our military crisis hotline. A lot of people going through issues, Big C. I just want them to know there's help out there. All they got to do is call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If they're online, they can go online at veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, it's always so important to get our great veterans of this country some help in any type of way you can, financially, emotionally. And emotionally, they need it very, very much, Charlton, in this country. They come back from the horrific wars that they've served overseas, and not just the most recent one, Charlton. We go talking about Vietnam, and we saw the great veterans at the Super Bowl from World War II. These veterans are always in need of help, emotionally, financially. And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is one of those emotional lines that they can reach out to. Some 19 veterans a day commit suicide in America, a horrific disease and a horrific rate that we have. But suicide does not discriminate against age and creed or even profession, Charlton. And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline was set up for our veterans, but it has accessibility to anyone who feels they're in a crisis and needs someone to talk to.
They really are set up. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and they can get some help. They really are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones. We love being a part of that message, Big C, to the universe. Everybody needs help at times. You know, just one more thing. I want to talk to you about some more football, about who's going to be the new face of the NFL. But you ever eat some gumbo? And if you don't floss your teeth, every now and then at nighttime, you still find some gumbo that's hit behind those cavities. Big C, I found some of that gumbo last night also. But I wanna say there's still people in the Bay Area, and I'm sure all over the country, but primarily Bay Area. They were saying that Jimmy G did not get the benefit of a call where he was hit in the helmet, and that he was concussed. He was concussed. You could see that he was grabbing his helmet. Well, if he was concussed, why didn't the coaching staff put him under the blue tent and go through protocol? You don't leave that up to the officials. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, officials don't dictate whether somebody's concussed or not. Every NFL team has, a medical staff, as well as the NFL has watchdogs for that, Charlton, throughout a game to see if a player is struggling physically to get up off the ground and off of the field.
Yeah, and so if as much as we want to blame somebody else, if I have something happen, hey, I'm going to blame somebody else. If something happens to my car tire, I'm going to blame the city. They should have fixed those potholes. If you drive with your eyes open and not quarterback like Garoppolo, you keep your eyes open. The thing, I love everyone to succeed, but I know this is the same media that beat up Colin Kaepernick for asking for equality and liberty and justice for all. So it just, to me, I just want to bring it out. They showed a picture in the paper, and, just getting around, getting back to see things, getting back in town, you see a newspaper article, and it had Jimmy G being hit, and his eyes were closed. Now, you sack many quarterbacks. I'm sure you poke many in their eyes also. Do they normally close their eyes when they're trying to throw the ball, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the picture that you're talking about, that's when Jimmy Garoppolo threw the first interception that he threw out towards the sideline. And Charlton, Jimmy G saw the hit coming, and he closed his eyes before he got hit.
Yeah.
He closed his eyes out of fear because he was not willing to stand in and take the hit to deliver the pass.
Yeah.
So if people want to say he was concussed on that play, no. His eyes were closed prior to any contact being made with his body in anticipation of the hit coming.
Yeah.
I saw the play many times on replay.
Well, have you noticed that in over the years playing ball, watching ball? I don't know if quarterbacks close their eyes because you got those HD TVs down there. I don't know if that's natural, though. A boxer doesn't close their eyes when they get punched. They maybe squint, but they don't close them, Big C. Your thoughts?
No, Charlton, when I saw Jimmy G close his eyes on that play, it was just like watching Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan was coaching not to lose the Super Bowl, not to win the Super Bowl, and he put his team in peril, as well as Jimmy G was playing the game not to get hurt, not to make sure he followed through on everything by closing his eyes. That showed me the fear that was over Jimmy G in this game, that the moment was too big for him, as well as it was too big for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
I look at these two personnel people, Charlton, a head coach and a quarterback. I don't know if it's a good fit because you got a head coach that is not willing to put the right plays in place in two different Super Bowls in Atlanta several years ago when he was coaching the Falcons against the New England Patriots when they had the largest comeback in the history of Super Bowl championships, Charlton.
Yeah.
And then this most present one with the Kansas City Chiefs where he had a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and he could not make the right play calls. I know a lot of people are going to put it on Jimmy G's back saying that he made errors and mistakes. But look who's the messenger. I mean, you don't always want to shoot the mailman, or as they say, have the dog bite the mailman, Charlton.
Yeah.
But the messenger sometimes is the guy that you want to look at.
Yeah, you guys got some funny alarms down south. People spend all that money on Ring.com. They spend all that money on getting cameras to go in front of their houses and on their fences, gated communities. You guys just get a good old faithful dog, Big C. Is that your alarm dog? Your thoughts?
Hey, they work every time. They wake up, and they're loyal as long as you feed them. No power bill.
Love when you feed them. I love the alarm systems for the good old boys down south. So I want to bring this up because, I love this game, and I'm still I watched so much football over the last year. I've kind of not watched anything in the last 12 hours because I need to detox from it, okay? But at the same time, looking at some newspapers that I rarely read anymore. I'd rather go online and read stuff all over the world as opposed to reading something that happened yesterday. But when I bring up the thing about Jimmy G and Bay Area media, and I've told you, living out here, you would have thought that if you take your team to a Super Bowl, that you are kind of the prodigal son. And Colin Kaepernick did that as the only African-American to take the 49ers to the Super Bowl from the quarterback spot. And there's still this pushback that people hated him. They just hated him because he wanted fairness for black people outside of a football stadium. When you're playing basketball and football, people love you, and you know that. But what about when you're just plain clothes walking down the street or driving more than 2 or 3 in a car? We don't want to be perceived as a menace or a threat. And when Colin Kaepernick spoke about that and took a knee, people said, oh, he hates the military. He hates the troops. He doesn't hate the military. He doesn't hate the troops. We even give out a crisis hotline on every single show. Mainstream's not doing that, Big C. So when I ask you the thoughts about the new face of the NFL, my opinion is they wanted Garoppolo to be the new face of the 49ers. So therefore, they overlooked the 5 interceptions he threw in practice. You don't do that on purpose. You do that because you have a flaw. And so I've been telling you, they've been hiding him the whole year. I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback and can't be good, but he's not better than Colin Kaepernick. And people say, well, look at the record. If you look at the draft picks that Colin Kaepernick had when he took the Niners to the Super Bowl, they didn't have first-round draft picks all over the front line. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, even if you compare both of their Super Bowl performances, Charlton, the performance that Colin Kaepernick put on in the Super Bowl in New Orleans against the Baltimore Ravens gave the San Francisco 49ers an opportunity to win the game all the way down to the last play.
Yeah.
You didn't get that type of drive from a Jimmy Garoppolo. You didn't get that type of leadership from Jimmy Garoppolo. Colin Kaepernick would take the ball under his arms. If it was desired that he needed to run the ball, he would do that. He had the help of Frank Gore in the backfield. He had a set of receivers, Charlton, that did not have the speed that they have right now in San Francisco and across the field talent. Colin Kaepernick was a bigger leader in San Francisco than what Jimmy Garoppolo has been thus far in his career. And, it's yet to be seen. Will Jimmy Garoppolo take them to back-to-back NFC championship games? If he doesn't do that, Charlton, then he's nowhere in the same league as Colin Kaepernick.
No, he's not. Colin's still the quarterback in the NFL that's had the most rush yards in a playoff game. You don't have that where quarterbacks rush for 100 yards in a game and pass for 350 yards. Colin Kaepernick did that. The reason I bring it up is because when people are making excuses about what happened to the Niners, and some people call in and say, well, Garoppolo did this and he panics under pressure. There was a Monday Night Football broadcaster that said that same thing. He panics under pressure. And people still defend it. No, he doesn't. It's the quarterback. It's the offensive lineman's fault. The receivers aren't getting open. But there was a commentator that may not be on Monday Night Football next year because he criticized the same player that people tried to hide. I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm just saying, I'm not even trying to defend Colin Kaepernick. I'm just trying to give some equal time. So I want to come up to this scenario because you and I talk about all the time. The future of this NFL is going to get bigger. There's more money coming in. They will go to 17 games. They may cut out a preseason game, but it's going to happen. But when you want to see the face of a league, they tried to do it with Tom Brady, and it's worked for 18, 20 years. Tom Brady, you can't knock a guy that's been to, 9 Super Bowls, Big C, has 6 championship rings. Before Tom Brady, you could say maybe it was a Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. Maybe even on the tail of a Steve Young, maybe Donovan McNabb, because we saw those guys. And before that, you got to go way back in to say maybe someone like a Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, Joe Montana, those guys. So the new face now, media wants it to be Tony, Garoppolo here in the Bay Area. I know there's some guys, Lamar Jackson, maybe some guys like that, but they were so hopeful that this guy would win the Super Bowl because he would get more advertisements than you're seeing Patrick Mahomes. Do you disagree with that, or does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if the media ever thought that Jimmy Garoppolo would be the face of the NFL because he's never really done anything in his career other than back up Tom Brady to get 2 Super Bowl titles. Tom Brady's been the face of the NFL for a decade and a half, and rightfully so. He's been named the Golden Boy, and he has delivered the products on the field.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought that Andrew Luck would be the heir apparent, but how quick. When you leave the NFL, you're forgotten about.
Really
Many people no one talks about Andrew Luck anymore, and he was supposed to be the next chosen one. That's how the NFL moves beyond people. As we constantly talked about Colin Kaepernick,
yeah,
they move beyond Colin Kaepernick. They moved beyond Andrew Luck when he retired. Now they're looking for that next savior who is going to carry the NFL for the next decade.
Well, I know you say they've moved beyond it, but again, coming back to the Bay Area, there are still people, because I love this business. I've been listening to other programs for many, many years since I was a little boy. My dad would mostly listen to boxing and baseball. But at the same time, I still hear callers actually calling in and giving complaints, and I hear some of the hosts saying, yeah, but what about Colin Kaepernick? He lost his Super Bowl too. Like, Colin hasn't played in 6 years for the 49ers, but I still find that vitriol, and I want
the same thing Donald Trump says about President Obama.
Yeah.
He hasn't been president for 3 years.
Yep.
But everything that he does wrong, he wants to blame Obama.
Well, maybe that's a cultural thing, and I'm glad you brought that up too. We have State of the Union coming up tonight. So I want to get your thoughts. I know you're down south. I know the NFL is undergoing a sea change. And it's the sea change that's happening is what they've tried to push back. And when someone was intelligent, they say, well, he's football smart, not that he's intelligent. They've said that when there's mostly men of color. So, my opinion, they wanted to make Jimmy G the face of the league. I'm saying the league wanted that, not just San Francisco market. And that's why it was all about him and Tom Brady over the last couple of years. But let me get your thoughts. Lamar Jackson, he was the league MVP, unanimous MVP. I know some of your friends wanted him to be a quarterback or defensive back or whatever back, Big C. But give me your feeling on if Lamar Jackson can be what Tom Brady has been with the NFL. Tom Brady's even making commercials, and he's not retired, but he's acting like he's semi-retired. Can Lamar Jackson reach that status, Big C? Your thoughts?
You know, I don't believe what Lamar Jackson did this year in the NFL is sustainable. We saw the wear and tear on Michael Vick as a running quarterback in the NFL. Eventually, when you get downfield, people no longer will respect you as a quarterback, Charlton, and you will take a pounding. One of the differences between what Lamar Jackson did, and you constantly speak about Colin Kaepernick, is Colin Kaepernick has a physical presence when he was playing in the NFL. He was a big man. He wasn't small and slight like Lamar Jackson. He was a guy that you could see spent many years in the weight room. But I don't see the marketability in a Lamar Jackson, even though he was a unanimous MVP.
Yeah. That's
just a one-time deal. He could never be unanimous MVP again in the NFL.
Yeah, especially when you see the performance in the Super Bowl of how Patrick Mahomes turned things around in the second half. So I've talked to you about the face of the league. Tom Brady, last 18, 20 years, they got to find somebody new. It wasn't going to be Tony Romo. They tried so many different guys. They wanted it to be Jared Goff. They wanted Matt Ryan to be the face. Russell Wilson, they like him because he's he's a quiet guy. He's still a person of color, but he's quiet. Doesn't say anything controversial. Maybe that's why it makes the most money. At the same time, Patrick Mahomes, you know, he did those discount double checks with your friend Aaron Rodgers. And I want to get your thoughts. Can this last more than a one and done? Is he Madison Avenue's favorite, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, right now, when we look at quarterbacks in the NFL, what Patrick Mahomes is not one and done. Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, is one of potentially two quarterbacks, and I think for the first time in the NFL history, we may have a dual presence as the face of the NFL, and they both will be African American. And Russell Wilson came along at a time like Drew Brees. Drew Brees was always having great years, but you had Peyton Manning, you had Tom Brady. You had players winning championships, and Drew Brees only won one.
Yeah.
And he even competed against Brett Favre. And so Aaron Rodgers, so he happened to be around when he was having great years. With like Lamar Jackson this year, he just had to have a stellar year above everyone else. But will it be consistent? So when I look at Patrick Mahomes and what he's done, he's already been, engulfed by American popularity.
Yeah.
As far as his mantra and his marketability. And I think he would be one of two quarterbacks that will be the face of the NFL over the next decade.
Okay, now, I just want to ask you if that makes any sense. Because over the last couple of years, we've seen Dak Prescott come out. We've seen, Deshaun Watson come out. We've seen, obviously, Carson Wentz. They have so many players that they want to build up and say, this is like Jared Goff. They want this guy to be it. And I think Carson Wentz, according to Madison Avenue, mainstream would love to see him be the face of the league, but he's shown that he can't stay healthy. He's never been healthy since his junior year in college, Big C. Every single year he's been hurt, and he doesn't have a Super Bowl championship that he played in and won. He hasn't had the backup. So if you compare, let's say, Wentz to Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, or even Russell Wilson, but he's more the senior guy. We're looking for the new face. How would you compare those three, Wentz, Jackson, and Mahomes, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, of the three, when I think about it, Mahomes right now is head and shoulders above everybody.
Really?
There's only one quarterback in the NFL right now has the same marketability that Patrick Mahomes does. And that's going to be down in Dallas at America's team with Dak Prescott.
Okay.
Those two individuals, from my perspective, are the new faces of the NFL. When you look at both of these quarterbacks, Charlton, they both have commercials on television. So they're endorsed by Madison Avenue. And they've both been productive in their NFL careers. When you think about Dak, and what he's done in Dallas. Dallas would be irrelevant right now without Dak Prescott. If he held out, they're going to franchise him. They're not going to sign him to a long-term contract.
Yeah.
If he holds out and they go into the season, people will remember the Dallas Cowboys when Emmitt Smith held out and they started out the season 0-2.
Yeah.
They will do that without Dak Prescott. They would be 0-2, 0-3 starting out the season because they have nobody in the fold that can play. And his marketability, his presence, his demeanor, it is engaged by Madison Avenue and America. Both of these individuals are very likable, adorable. They've been winners. They've set records as quarterbacks in their first 3 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
They're on pace to be two of the faces for the next decade.
Well, I mean, maybe, but I'm going to ask you this question, too. If you look at the largest market in the United States, that's New York. You have Sam Darnold, and you also have the kid at the New York Giants that I don't think Jones is going to be the marketability that maybe Sam Darnold can be. But out here on the West Coast, they're building a $5 billion stadium in Los Angeles. You have Jared Goff, came out of Cal Berkeley, Pac-12. They call him the golden boy. They love that eugenic look that looks like a lot of the owners. So even though he went to the Super Bowl last year, had a horrible performance, and he's been trending down. So in your opinion, as you being very realistic, do you really believe that American media wants to take a guy like Carson Wentz from the East Coast, Jared Goff from the West Coast, and put them behind quarterbacks of color that have had such a pushback from the mainstream owners? Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
But see, by talking about media market size stuff, and that means you're living in the past. Media market now in America means nothing because everybody's accessible to everything. The person in Wyoming is going to see the same thing as the person in New York. The person in Miami is going to see the same thing as the person in Los Angeles. The person in Dallas is going to see the same thing as the person in Chicago. It's all about who can sell product.
Yeah.
And when you think about merchandising, Dallas Cowboys merchandising sells more than anybody.
Yeah.
You don't see Jared Goff on any national commercials. You don't see Carson Wentz on any national commercials. But you do see Dak Prescott on national commercials. He's in Dallas. You see Patrick Mahomes on national commercials. He's in Kansas City. It's not based on market size with either one of those individuals. It's based on accessibility and likability. They go out and poll what Americans want.
Yeah.
And they want those two individuals more than they want any other young quarterback. Another thing is their skin complexion.
Yeah.
They are light-complected African-American quarterbacks. That's very marketable, more than what you're going to get with a Lamar Jackson. You've seen Russell Wilson with commercials because of complexion, Charlton. When you see the dark-complected African-American quarterbacks, they do not get the exposure. After Doug Williams as a dark-complected African-American won the Super Bowl, he could never play again. That was it, because of his complexion as much as anything else. So when you look at the marketability of the African-American quarterback, they're looking at the mulatto African-American quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott. They are more marketable appearance-wise than a Lamar Jackson would ever be.
How would you, and this is a conversation that many people don't hear in mainstream, but they hear behind closed doors. I would say the most marketable athlete in the universe is Tiger Woods, and then I'd say second to him would be LeBron James on a global impact. I also am paying respect and homage to the Mamba, the late Kobe Bryant. I had no idea how much impact Kobe Bryant had on people all over the world, from China to Australia to the United Kingdom, of course, in the United States. And if we talk about skin complexion, he had a complexion that was oftentimes marginalized because he did not pass the paperback test. And I've always seen Madison Avenue, they have still looked for a guy like a Tom Brady or a guy maybe like a Drew Brees, and they tried to build, or a Joe Montana, Broadway Joe. But maybe that sea change is happening. But I still disagree that they're looking for a fairer skin or a lighter skin African-American. When I look at like guys like Kobe Bryant, who's the most beloved, as well as Michael Jordan and LeBron James.
You're talking basketball and we're talking football.
Yeah.
You're talking a whole different genre, just like with Tiger Woods. You talk Tiger Woods, that was a golf thing, and that was about winning with Tiger Woods. If Tiger Woods had not been winning, he would have not been there. And even if you look at tennis, when you look at the tennis and how they market it, the top two tennis players on the female circuit are African-American.
Yeah.
They're really not pushed in the mainstream as far as advertising. That's Coco Gauff and Naomi Osaka. They're bigger than Serena Williams. They're not pushed in the mainstream, and they're the next wave of African-American female tennis players. But they're trying to find somebody who can segue that, Charlton, and not be that African-American dominant female. When you look at the success of Simone Biles in the world of athletics, she's been more successful than any female gymnast in history. But if you go back and you look at the marketing that Mary Lou Retton got after winning a couple gold medals, Charlton, for the U.S., she was the biggest media darling in the world. And Simone Biles has never risen to her heights in the gymnastics world.
Or even I look at it, someone, when you think about tennis, Maria Sharapova, not nearly as talented, but they did like the white skin complexion because Madison Avenue is run by that. It's the same issue we've had in Hollywood. We've had it in broadcast. People talk about it behind closed doors, but they don't talk about it, when the doors are open to the universe the way we do. I love the dialogue. I believe in it. I still believe that there's still a color line that exists in the United States. Maybe always has been, always will be. Give me your thoughts on another player. A multi-talented player, did the same things that Deion Sanders did back in the day, and also Bo Jackson, playing football and also baseball. And I know that he hasn't played baseball yet, but he was drafted. He could go, if he's smart enough to not focus on his CTEs, that maybe he will transition into baseball down the road. We know Tim Tebow, he's trying to do the same thing from football and also baseball. So give me your feeling on a Kyler Murray. You talked about Dak Prescott. Kyler Murray's in Arizona. They turned down the Martin Luther King holiday twice in Arizona. Do you really think they'll let Kyler Murray become the face of the NFL? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they turned it down, Charlton, but they accepted it so that they could get a Super Bowl. That's how powerful and dominant football is. It will make you change laws in states because you want that representation of the biggest game in the world, Charlton. Kyler Murray has to have the misfortune of coming along and being in that same era that you have Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes in, Charlton. All the quarterbacks that we can look at in the NFL now, all of these quarterbacks are going to pale marketing-wise when it comes to Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has the MVP and the Super Bowl title. Dak Prescott quarterbacks America's team. That right there is a big mantra as far as media appeal, quarterbacking America's team. Just the name of that alone makes people want to gravitas to where you are. Kyler Murray would be a superstar in any other era, Charlton. It's just he's in the era where two quarterbacks are going to dominate NFL advertising for the next 2 years, next 10 years. That's Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott.
Kyler Murray out of the state of Texas, and then also Deshaun Watson playing in the state of Texas, went to school at Clemson. Kyler Murray went to Oklahoma. Deshaun Watson, to see performances in the Super Bowl, to see his performance that he had against Buffalo, I'll never forget it. Because they were also behind a lot like Patrick Mahomes. Also, when they played the Chiefs, maybe the cold got to him because he was always under a blanket, it seems, as opposed to being out in the element, Big C. But as a marketing person, do you think that they would market Deshaun Watson and a Dak Prescott in a state where they used to have Dan Marino down in the Houston Oilers, and also the great Roger the Dodger starback, and of course Troy Aikman, Big C, for the Cowboys? Can these two African-American men become the face of an NFL when they may not even be the face in their own state, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, it's Dak Prescott by a landslide in Texas. Deshaun Watson is another one of those great young talents, Charlton, that just happens to be out there. As I say, it's only going to be two faces of the NFL, and this is going to be the first time in the history that you have two quarterbacks carry that mantra, one in the AFC, one in the NFC. Other quarterbacks will pop up and have great years here and there, but you're going to see consistency in their career from Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes as far as playing on the field. When you look at Dak's numbers, they've gotten better each year as a quarterback. The team around him has to get better. Maybe with McCarthy in coaching him, the team will get better. And if they make it to the NFC Championship game, Charlton, or even get close to the Super Bowl, I know they have one of the toughest schedules in the NFL next year. But if they win 10 or 11 games to win that Eastern Division, the sky's the limit for marketing of Dak Prescott in Texas and in the U.S.
He gotta convince Jerry Jones first to even keep him in Dallas, Big C. But we'll see how that goes. I love these conversations. It's just real talk. It's like barbershop talk. People talk about things that are real and not trying to be Pollyannish with everything. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, Big C, I know you want $100 million. I want $100 million. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com, and the apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I thank God for that. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, I know I want to talk about the $100 million. Everybody wants $100 million. And it seems like $200 million is the new bargaining chip coming up for the next big face NFL quarterback, as you talked about who can be the face of the NFL. But before we get into the talk about $100 million, how fast does the NFL change in players that can be forgotten once they leave the league? And this also goes into the $100 million thing, because you think it's going to buy them a spot forever, but it doesn't. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's what I was mentioning about Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck retired before the season started this year in the NFL. His name was not mentioned at all throughout the season because of the great play from other young quarterbacks. Andrew Luck was poised to be the face of the NFL for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
But injuries caught up with him and pain caught up with him. And he decided he no longer wanted to participate in that. But the league moves on from players, just like we constantly talk about Colin Kaepernick. The league moved on from Colin Kaepernick. And look at it from this perspective. If they can move on from Andrew Luck and not mention Andrew Luck at all, and Andrew Luck was looked at as being the next great quarterback in the league, not just running quarterback, but the next great quarterback.
Yeah.
And he made the playoffs his last year in the NFL. He just decided he no longer wanted to deal with the grind any longer. And when he made that separation, the league made that separation, because there are too many players in this great league for the league to worry about one individual. It comes back to the saying that Spock made in the Star Trek movie. The needs of the many outweighs the needs of the few or the one.
Yeah.
And the NFL is about the many, and they move on from everybody.
Could you imagine how good a quarterback Spock would have been with that Vulcan mind control? He would just touch people on the side of the head, and they would faint. But sometimes the universe is not ready for a Vulcan quarterback yet, Big C. You never know. Things can change. I love Star Trek. The late Gene Roddenberry produced that. I want to ask you about $100 million. Everybody wants $100 million, even though some people say they don't want it. I want it. However, NFC football quarterbacks, believe this, when it comes to playoffs, in the NFC, National Football League, all of them made over $100 million, Big C, when you look at the San Francisco 49ers. $100 million. Green Bay Packers, $100 million. Minnesota Vikings, $100 million. Philadelphia Eagles, over $100 million. Seattle Seahawks, over $100 million. And that is real cheese, Big C. Your thoughts?
It is real cheese, Charlton, but it goes to prove that they're constantly talking about signing a franchise quarterback and what they command financially, Charlton, and that's going to guarantee you winning. All of those NFC quarterbacks, when you think about it, all of them are making over $100 million on their contract, Charlton.
Yeah.
None of them were able to win the Super Bowl this year.
Really, that's incredible. When you think about that, I know we all want to have that big bank account, that Tiger Woods kind of money where you don't have to worry about anything. It's just there. And the fact that everybody's talking about Mahomes got to get $40 million, we got to pay him $200 million. Well, he won a Super Bowl without $200 million. But if you do that, you're going to start hurting the franchise, Big C. But on the other side of the fence, the AFC, American Football Conference, you think about the quarterbacks, none of them made over $100 million. Not for Baltimore, not for the Kansas City Chiefs, not for the New England Patriots, not for the Houston Texans, not for the Buffalo Bills, or the Tennessee Titans, Big C. Your thoughts? All right, Big C, we were having a little bit of technical difficulty when I talked about $100 million. Some good old boys wanted to tap in and find out what we're talking about. But when you talk about the AFC quarterbacks, you know, none of them made more than $100 million. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is a cry throughout everybody, Charlton, that you got to have a franchise quarterback and you got to pay him the most money on the team. This year in the AFC playoffs, it proved that you didn't. all those young guns that they have in the AFC, Charlton, prove that they can play. Patrick Mahomes had $5.7 million against the Bucs in Kansas City, and it produced an NFC Super Bowl champion, NFL World Championship in the Super Bowl championship. Not only that, Charlton, he won the MVP of the league last year. His total contract with the Kansas City Chiefs was only $15.1 million, Charlton, for the 3 years that he's been there. So you think about where they are still with an opportunity to have 1 year left on that contract that they can pay him, is that they can still stay under the cap and sign other players. Now, although at the end of the season they're going to have to pay him, and he will be the first $200 million quarterback, but he will live up to his expectations, though.
Yeah, money's just money when you got billionaire owners, Big C. So when you think about money and Garoppolo for the Niners, you got $137 million, I think $70+ million guaranteed. But the San Francisco 49ers, they got to the NFL, the biggest party of them all, the Super Bowl, Big C, with the great defense that the 49ers had in 2 playoff games against Minnesota and Green Bay. And then in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs, they gave up a total of 34 points in the fourth quarter, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, everybody talked about how great that 49er defense was. But the Kansas City Chiefs went into the Super Bowl understanding that there were vulnerabilities in the fourth quarter with the San Francisco 49er defense. When you think about what the San Francisco 49ers had done with the Green Bay Packers, and that's where they took their exploits from.
Yeah.
The Packers were able to put 13 points on the scoreboard in the fourth quarter against the 49ers, outscored them because they played so aggressively in the first 3 quarters, Charlton. They were a little spent come the fourth quarter.
Yeah, sometimes if your offense is not keeping drive to the line, you go get a drink of water, you're like, what? I got to get out there again? I remember the Niners had a first and 10. They ran the ball, mostly picked up 5 yards. So they had 2nd and 5. They threw 2 incompletions. Like, you're getting 5 yards of carry, run the ball again, Big C. Everybody wanted to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and it was great. The great Patrick Mahomes in 2 playoff games against the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. And then if you add the Super Bowl, would you believe the Chiefs defense that was so maligned by media, they only gave up 13 total points, Big C. Your thoughts?
13 points in 3 games, Charlton. As everybody going into the Super Bowl only wanted to rave about the Chiefs offense, they forgot to give homage to the Chiefs defense. And here it is. In 3 playoff games and a Super Bowl, they gave up a mere 13 points. They gave up 4.3 points a game, Charlton, in those 3 games in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the best defense on the field, and it proved out in the Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs had it.
Yeah, they talk about monsters of the Midway. They might be monsters of the Midwest, Big C. But you also look at the 49ers running backs. They're running backs in the NFL Hall of Fame that average 4.8 yards a carry. The 49ers averaged 5 yards a carry in the Super Bowl. And the Kansas City Chiefs, even though they were said they didn't have a running attack and that Mahomes is really their only running threat, they averaged actually about 6 yards a carry, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Mahomes was not part of that 6 yards a carry. That's from running backs only. Damon Williams averaged 6 yards a carry in the Super Bowl. He was a yard better than the San Francisco duel of Coleman and Mostert in the Super Bowl, Charlton. So when you think about Damon Williams on 17 carries, averaging 6 yards a carry, and you think about Mostert and Coleman, they averaged 5 yards a carry on 18 carries. So the better running back was the Kansas City Chiefs in the game.
Yeah, it's all about blocking and scheming. I thought they did a good job. But when you have a quarterback that can play outside of the universe, maybe Spock could play better quarterback than the great Patrick Mahomes, also Big C. But it really puts a lot of pressure on your defensive line and linebackers. The NFL, I want to get Big C's final NFL power rankings. Now, sometime I know you good boys down south, you do a lot of your own homemade Kool-Aid, if you understand what I'm saying. But I want to get Big C's thoughts. I want you to give out Big C's power rankings now that the season's over and people are depressed because we can't wait until the OTAs start. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when we think about the power rankings in the NFL, you got to start with the Kansas City Chiefs as number 1 because they won the Super Bowl. I'm going to bring the 49ers in at number 2 because they were in the Super Bowl and lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. But when I think about number 3, it's going to give the San Francisco 49ers a lot of trouble in their division next year, and that's going to be the Seattle Seahawks when they get their running game healthy. I look at number 4, New Orleans. They are a great regular season team, and that's the reason why I keep them at number 4. Number 5, I bring in the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think what they did this year is sustainable. I don't see them coming back with 13 wins, maybe 11 this upcoming season, Charlton. But a team on the rise, the Buffalo Bills, I bring them in at 6. With the uncertainty about Tom Brady's future in New England, it would put Buffalo Bills at the top of the heap in the AFC East.
Yeah.
The Houston Texans, their coach O'Brien, as long as he's been there, they will never be in the top 5 in the NFL, Charlton, because I don't think he's the right head coach for Deshaun Watson. At number 8, the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, I think this was his last run at Vince Lombardi's trophy, Charlton. I don't see him at 37 getting any better. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to come in at number 9 because they won the East Division, Charlton, and they have to be dethroned being the Eastern Division champions. At number 10, the New England Patriots because of the uncertainty about Tom Brady's future.
Now, let me ask you a question, Big C, just my opinion. Now, when the Seattle Seahawks, their season was ended by Green Bay, you have them at 3 and Green Bay 8. When I also look at a team like New Orleans, their season was ended by the Minnesota Vikings. They're not on the list. The Baltimore Ravens, they were beaten by the Tennessee Titans. They're not on the list. Give me your reasoning for that, Big C, your thoughts.
The reason for that, Charlton, because if you were to line those teams up 4 games in a row, Charlton, I don't think that they would win more than 1 game against those teams. I mean, when you look at the power rankings, the power rankings is not about what you did over 1 game. It's about what you did over the entire season. So if you go back and you look and say, okay, I'm going to give this team the nod because of 1 game that they won, then you have to go back and put the Cleveland Browns ahead of the Baltimore Ravens, Charlton. You got to put the Baltimore Ravens ahead of the San Francisco 49ers, who were in the Super Bowl. And even up and down the list, Charlton, you had teams that lose games that did not make this ranking, that beat teams. Well, you had teams that made this ranking that lost to teams that did not make this ranking. It's about the overall power of a team.
Yeah, Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson with a lucky punch, but I don't think he could beat him consistently. I understand your thoughts. I want to ask you, who will the Kansas City Chiefs resemble in the 2020 season? We look at teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, where they resemble them, or the New England Patriots. You know, sometimes when you win a Super Bowl, do you always come back and repeat? Not necessarily, but give me your feeling of what the Kansas City Chiefs will look like in 2020 season with a $200 million quarterback. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I look at the Kansas City Chiefs built to resemble the New England Patriots more than they did the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles spent their entire offseason partying, talking about the lacks that they had within the organization, and it wasn't run like a Gestapo like you had in New England with Bill Belichick. If you look at what Andy Reid has done throughout his coaching career, Charlton, when he was in Philadelphia and went to 5 consecutive NFC championship games, he kept a team intact and focused on about what the prize was. You look at what he's done the last 3 years in Kansas City with Alex Smith at quarterback 3 years ago, getting them into the playoffs, Charlton, following that up with Patrick Mahomes getting to the AFC championship game, and then this year getting to the Super Bowl title, Charlton, in a 3-year run, what he's done. He has his team built and understand what their goal is, Charlton, and that's reaching the Super Bowl. I see them as the favorite getting back there again in 2020.
Well, I tell you what, they do have a big eye on their chest. And unlike the New England Patriots that won the Super Bowl last year, Super Bowl 53, you know, this team is loaded. They're not going into wondering who they're going to have at quarterback. And, of course, I think the players just love playing for Andy Reid. Actually, they love playing for paychecks. Andy Reid's a nice guy, too, but they play for the paychecks. And thinking of paychecks, think about how much money is thrown around in the NFL. In addition to bringing home the coveted Lombardi Trophy, the Kansas City Chiefs players will each receive a bonus of $124,000 just for being winners of Super Bowl 54. And some guys actually had that in their wallet, it seems. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it does, Charlton. You think about that, that's a great prize to get, along with that medallion that they're going to put on their finger, calling it a ring, Charlton. It's going to be so large in Kansas City. But the payday for winning Super Bowl 54 for each player on the team, not on the roster, but on the team, guys, on the practice roster and everywhere else. Injury report, Charlton, inactive players, they're all going to receive that bonus check of $154,000. But you think about that, you're going to have $86,000, Charlton, thrown in from your 2 playoff victories that you had in the conference championship and in the semifinal round, Charlton. It's going to bring your total for the offseason for the Kansas City Chiefs players to $211,000 is what they're going to receive which is no drop in the bucket when you think about that the average salary in the NFL in 1983, when the 49ers came to their rise, Charlton, was just $123,000 actually. So the Super Bowl payoff is more than what the 49ers average salary was when they first won a Super Bowl.
Isn't that amazing? No wonder Joe Montana was making commercials and the good old boys, Ronnie Lott, doing a lot of things in the offseason also. And thinking about that for the 49ers, their players total, I told you they're still digging for gold. $149,000 would be the total for the postseason for the 49ers. When you throw that kind of money around, you know Macy's closing 125 department stores before the State of the Union speech. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Macy's filed bankruptcy on their corporation last year, Charlton, so this was just the inevitable coming along.
Yeah, it's just coming along. But the 49ers, 149,000, you know, nothing to go home and cry about. I remember, I believe I might be right about this, back in around the 70s, some players were saying if they even got $100,000, that was for the top of the league players. So to get this in a bonus, how might things have changed, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, if you look at 1971 in the NFL, the minimum salary that a player could make in 1971 in the league, Charlton, was a mere $14,000.
Wow.
So to understand the expeditious growth of this league, and like I said, in 1983, the average salary in the NFL was $123,000 when the Niners won their first Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's always a good thing that happen when you look at time and money and people. We always compare, could this generation of players do better than the next generation of players? It's all about timing and how things are at that time. But that's still a lot of money. I wish those guys nothing but the best. And I really want to get back to football. I'm sure we have this new football league starting up later this month. That might whet the appetite a little bit. Big C, I want to jump down to the world of college basketball. March Madness, would you believe it, is just 6 weeks away. And when you think about 6 weeks away, that's not a long time. I hardly know any of the players, Big C, for March Madness participating. But when you think about March Madness, there's actually some pretty solid basketball teams out there. But I still don't think it gives the excitement of back in the day when you had Jerry Tarkanian and those UNLV run of Rebels against Duke. And Coach Krzyzewski, his team, we always had Kentucky, North Carolina, the Michigans, Fab Five, all the great programs, the UCLAs of the world, Kansas, etc. But we have the Baylor Bears, they're 19-1. Kansas Jayhawks, they're 18-3. So they're the dogs right now when it comes to, some of the top teams. San Diego State Aztecs, they are 23-0. They just retired Kawhi Leonard's jersey. And then Coach Few, the Gonzaga Bulldogs, way up in the Palouse at 23-1, Big C. Are you excited, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you're always excited because March Madness brings the best out in college basketball. We don't have the big names carrying the mantra this year that we've come to adore over the years because of the one and done in college basketball, Charlton. So it's hard to have players that stay around for 3 and 4 years. Gonzaga has that group of players, but they're not in the national spotlight. And we think about San Diego State being the only undefeated team left in the country. And these two teams are dominating in the western part of the United States. But as we get to March Madness and you think about Baylor and Waco, they're not the big city in Texas, but they're the number one team in the country.
Yeah.
So as we settle down for March Madness in 6 weeks, Charlton, we'll become more familiarized with a lot of these names along the way of the great players in college basketball.
Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity. And I love the growth of sports, how it's really opened a lot of doors for people. And I know it's not everything, but it's an avenue into success that a lot of people are very good at sports. And it's great to see them be able to make a living on their athletic and academic abilities, Big C. I want to jump to something that's very important. We're in Black History Month, celebrating Black History Month on this date, February 4th. Think about this. Rosa Parks was born, and Rosa Louise McCauley, a black civil rights activist and passenger who refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus, which sparked a civil rights protest, and Montgomery became, in Alabama, the city of the bus boycott. But it started with a lady who wasn't very big, she wasn't very tall, she wasn't very fast, but it was her character was bigger and stronger and faster than a lot of people today with Rosa Parks. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what Charlton did was it brought back black power together. to show that black people no longer wanted to be second-class citizens, no wanted to sit up to tyranny in this country. And her movement, Charlton, sparked a movement that became a national outcry in the Montgomery City bus boycott, Charlton, which really put an economic strain on the city. And they saw the power of the black purse at that time, that the black dollar meant something in America, and they needed to make it more inclusive.
Isn't that something how we talk about it being more inclusive and how much money was just made and bet on the Super Bowl? Billions, over $6 billion bet on the Super Bowl. And that's legal money, Big C, in the league being over 70% African-American. So money, it's a billion-dollar business. I love being part of the industry that can talk about it all the time. But sometimes, we give out that National Suicide Hotline, and I know it's for military veterans, but it's for anybody. It's just having a knowledge of history. I don't take for granted that we get the chance to get on the airways and speak to the universe about whatever we want to, sports and entertainment. But it was people like Rosa Parks that made it even possible to sit on a darn bus. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, not just Rosa Parks, but there were many African Americans during that era, Charlton, that sacrificed. She happened to be the face of it, but actually the civil rights movement started with the mother of Emmett Till when he was murdered by white men in the South, Charlton, allegedly whistling at a white woman, and they mutilated this 14-year-old boy. And his mother had the courage to have an open casket, to no longer show the shame and embarrassment, just like we give out the National Suicide Hotline number, Charlton, of what white atrocity meant to black Americans in this country. And that really sparked the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks got named as the mother of the civil rights, but it's Emmett Till's mother who was really the mother of the civil rights movement in America.
Yeah, and I really appreciate where everybody's better off, no matter what color, your gender, your religious affiliation, when people can see each other as the same. We don't have to agree. People don't agree no matter what color you are, but respect and honesty is important. That's why I believe Google what everybody says. If we say something, if we don't know what we're talking about, you'll find out right away. Everybody has a chance to Google and get their opinion. And speaking about Rosa Parks and today's Black History Month, I do want to just give a congratulations. Candace Lee, she was named interim athletic director at Vanderbilt University. She's the first African-American woman to hold such a position at a major college institution. Big C, your thoughts?
And Charlton, it came during Black History Month, and I want to congratulate Candace Lee, being the first African-American woman to hold that dubious honor in that prestigious academic institution in America. It shows the growth of the African-American culture in America, Charlton.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just about opportunity. And again, we started the show and I was asking about, Garoppolo and how Bay Area media, which is a very diverse place, but I'm telling you, some of the media and some of the fans that would call in, they actually they want to blame Colin Kaepernick for whatever they want to. And making excuses for Jimmy G, who did not have the same kind of performance that Colin had, but they still want to blame that man of color for wanting to bring equality. And I don't know what white person doesn't want equality for their own children and grandchildren. And so they speak about it, or maybe take it for granted.
I think when you make that statement, don't want equality for them and their grandchildren, they already have equality, Charlton, when you're white America. You have equality. It's African Americans who seek equality. They don't understand what it's like to walk in an African American shoes. They can always say, I try to understand what you're saying, or they'll say, I have a couple of friends that are black. But until you're black, you can never ask for equality.
Yeah, oftentimes people have a way of just pushing you out. But we're going to push it in. What did that good old boy say, dab gum? Phyllis, he said, last year we knocked on the door. This year we beat on it. Next year we're going to kick the dab gum thing in. And that's what your voice is for. Speak up and be heard. What a big deal it was, speaking up for women's college basketball last night. Oregon knocked off UConn, the great Gina Auriemma. Them Ducks, you got to be careful when somebody sits a duck on your table, or Duke losing. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about that game of Oregon and UConn, I think it was a bigger testament for UConn when you think about that. UConn has not lost a home game since 2013.
Wow.
And this is the first time that they've lost on their home court in 7 years. And the Oregon Ducks coming in there being ranked number 3 in the country, Charlton, and knocking off UConn, who was number 4. UConn has that mantra to play anybody, any place, anytime. They have never ducked anybody on a national scale in women's college basketball. They've been the greatest program over the last decade. But this is a benchmark for the University of Oregon's Lady Ducks to come across the country, to go to Connecticut and knock off the Lady Huskies, a great feat for the Pac-12 basketball.
Yeah, I like the way you threw that pun in there. You said that UConn's never ducked anybody, Big C. When they got ducked, like, don't trust the duck when they come to your house and they can dribble a basketball to you, Big C. It's all fair in love and war. And speaking of duck, the Big Ten, they're not ducking this conversation. They have a proposal that would allow one transfer without sitting out a year in college sports. Coaches can do it. And I like that progress, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at what the Big Ten is proposing, Charlton, this is something that when you look at Division I college sports, they've always taken a page from Division I AA, which is called the Bowl Subdivision now. If you think about the expansion of college football playoffs, it came from 1AA. And Division I, it took that. When you think about college football overtime, that came from 1AA. Division I accepted that. You've always been able to transfer from a Division I college down to a Division I AA or sub-bowl division university and play immediately. And now that the Division I sees the benefits of that, not forcing kids to sit out a year and just practice, to be able to go in and play immediately, I think it's the right move to go across the universe of college football, Charlton, to have this acceptable. If a kid wants to transfer and be able to play at a university immediately, I think that everybody will accept that over the next 3 years.
Well, it's only the right thing to do, and it's going to happen. And we have that pay for play or your image. You can get paid on your image. That's all coming. The great Gavin Newsom out of California, Governor Gavin Newsom, signing that in the law. Also, some other governors throughout the country, too. I know we have the caucuses are going on, and the president's having the State of the Union tonight, so a lot of people are really into that. And, Big C, Super Bowl betting was almost $7 billion, for this past Sunday. That's a lot of money. The IRS wants that money, too. Now, what do they tell guys that bet illegally? If it's $7 billion legally, there's a lot of guys that don't do it the legal way, Big C. Do they pay taxes, too, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, they'll pay taxes if they don't pay up, Charlie.
They'll pay taxes if they don't pay up. I understand. It's all fair, love, and war. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to have a smart TV. I know in closing, it's still a great Super Bowl. There's so much to talk about, and sometimes like a nice meal, the leftovers taste pretty good the next day. The flavor kind of seeks in. And the thing that I think about the most of this Super Bowl in Miami, it went over without incident that we know of. We had a great halftime show. Some people say, hey, put more clothing on. The culture is culture. You always have the right to close the door or change the channel. But I do believe that going forward in 2020, you talked about the face of the NFL. Who's going to be the face of the NFL? I hope that face is full of diversity. I hope it's full of men and women, because everybody should have an opportunity. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's always full of opportunity. Diversity as far as women. We've seen the women impact in the NFL in this past season. We saw the assistant coach with the San Francisco 49ers, offensive coordinator, offensive assistant. We also saw the first female official in a Super Bowl, Charlton. So we saw the growth of gender equity in the Super Bowl, which has been an amazing thing in the plight of the NFL. They've been one of the leaders in that, just like in the NBA, Charlton. As we look forward into the new millennium as the NFL goes, we're going to see the page turn where you see African Americans be the more dominant entity in the NFL, not just as players, but as the spokespersons and representatives as the face of the league. As we talked about Dak Prescott down in Dallas and Patrick Mahomes there in Kansas City.
Yeah.
These two players, not only have they delivered on the field, they will deliver off the field. And when you look at players, you want to make sure that the player that you make is the face of the league has that background that will represent the league as the shield represents everybody. It's about protection of the shield. And you have to have that background that will protect the shield, Charlton. And these two players can carry that mantra because they've already been vetted.
And hopefully there'll be some more diversity in ownership. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Charlton, as we celebrate Black History Month 2020 here in February, I look forward to all the great exploits that African Americans have provided in the world of sports and entertainment for Americans, Charlton, as a culture and as a country, and to show that the diversity and leadership from an African American culture and how good it's made everybody's life in America.
Everybody's from Africa. Google it, Dr. Leaky Gregor Mendo. You can Google it too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.